Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
Hey guys, Phil here. This is a live recording from CHFA over the weekend. We recorded on Friday. We had a special guest that we were super excited to get. Pretty intense discussion, but we thought it was pretty good. I guess I came on to really tell you that it was a live recording, so there's going to be some background noise. There's some bumps and hisses and pops in here from recording live. So hopefully you find the conversation interesting, and forgive us for the live sound environment. We also took questions from guests from the audience and things like that. So the sound quality is a little bit different than we normally do. But stick with it. This is a great conversation.
3, 2, 1. We never get a countdown.
I don't count us.
No. Oh, okay.
That's very professional of you.
Very cool.
I was out here speaking at a gig, and he had just finished at London, Troy. So
I just left London.
Yeah.
He reached out on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm going to be in the city. I'll tell you the funny part. He goes, I'm going to be in the city. We should get together for coffee. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure. And I'm thinking, I don't know who the hell this guy is. Right? So I went on his profile and it said J&J, and I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, I could have met him. I think I've met him. And then I reached out to 2 J&J friends. Oh, he came out to do this and this. And I thought, oh, yeah, I think I remember the guy. So we met at the coffee bar that I had.
who'd you reach out to? Like Joanne?
Lynn and Joanne.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So Joanne probably said nice things. Lynn probably said mean things.
Yeah, consistent, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then we met at the coffee bar, but we sat in the bar for about half an hour without even knowing each of us was in the bar. Because he was in the back of my coffee bar and I was in the front, and I didn't know who he was. Right, honestly. And then we sat down, we talked for about 3 hours, and then he said we should do a podcast. And I don't know what a podcast is, right? So I said, yeah, we should do one if you're going to do the work, because I don't know what we do. I still don't know what we do. I can do this part, but I can't. I don't know what the hell he does.
This is the fun part.
That's it. Yeah. So that's how we met.
Yeah.
Cool. 5.5 years ago, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And then we started recording about a month after that coffee bar, and we've recorded every single month, every single week.
Except for that week that you got COVID.
Yeah, we just doubled up recordings. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah.
There's your story.
So welcome, CHFA West. We're recording live. We've got an audience, which
we don't
normally have. Yeah. Our families don't care what we do.
They don't listen to
really
it.
cares. So yeah.
No.
Yeah. So sometimes we get my dog on, right? Because she barks. She barks.
My son could be around.
When she hears Kenny's voice, she barks, right?
But otherwise, nobody else in the family listens to this.
Yeah. But we're pretty excited to be here. It's kind of been a bit of a journey. There's been some pretty cool stuff going on.
Yep.
We've been I think this time too, we've been really immersed with the Launchpad stuff, because we've been involved in CHFA's Launchpad stuff. So we had those guys on a bunch of videos that are on the YouTube channel and stuff, and he's judging. So whatever happens, it's his fault tonight.
All over.
Yeah.
That'll be
Poor
good.
bastard. I don't know how you're going to choose.
I don't know.
Kind of wicked. So
let's put a buyer hat on, and I'll just. I don't know. I'll try to be nice. We'll see where it goes.
We have a guest today. We have Dean from TMRW Foods on. Did I say that? Tomorrow, right?
Yep.
TMRW Foods. Yeah.
That's right.
And we're excited because Dean has had. We've been trying to get together with Dean, but we've just had some conflicts and stuff like that going on. So
He's being nice too. We've had no conflicts. Dean's had conflicts.
I've been a big problem.
So it's been
getting
Dean.
together.
It's not been us.
okay,
we've been
so
ready.
we've had conflicts, and Dean hasn't been able to make it.
It's been
he's
entirely
here, and we're really happy.
Super stoked.
Don't make him mad, so he leaves. He still has time to leave.
Actually, we were laughing. So another story. So we asked him to come on the podcast, I think last year at this show.
Yeah.
So it took about 3 times to finally get a chance to talk to him, and he wasn't too sure about the podcast. So we were going to do like a 10-minute,
we should have
just to
recorded
get
that.
to meet each other, right?
That was
right?
such a good
He ended up talking
conversation.
for an hour
Yeah.
with us, and I told him later, I said, that should have just been hit record, because we did the podcast already, and then to try to get you on took another 4 hits. So it's been like a year to finally get him on a recorded podcast. You hit record back there, right? So this is actually going to happen. Good to go.
But welcome to the show.
Cool.
And then thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you. You'll all be on the podcast too on Monday, because this will drop on the episodes on Monday. So yeah.
And because we don't normally do with an audience, I think what we like to do is pretty much the same format we normally do. We don't have a set plan. Love to know, obviously, what you do, why you do it. Like, how did you get into this space? You and I have had some discussion before. I'd really like to have a perspective of what you feel for sure, where this industry is going, some of the challenges it's had, why do this, and what's the importance of it. And then I think we could even open it up potentially to some questions. People are here, you may as well take advantage of it to see where it goes. But really, for the next 45 minutes to an hour it's yours. So to start, really, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? And then
we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm Dean. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TMRW Foods. I'm generally not very interesting, so I'm still kind of surprised by why I'm here. But very happy to be here, and thank you for that. What we do is create protein, and an alternative to the status quo when it comes to protein. Why we do it is that we're ultimately driven by this idea that we can create proteins that are better than any proteins that exist today. It doesn't matter from which source. And to define better further, it means that it has to be obviously great tasting. It has to be made from good ingredients and be truly irrefutably nutritious. It has to be more affordable and accessible to not just certain aspects of society, but all society. And it obviously has to be more sustainable than what we currently have. But we ultimately believe that if we can get the fundamental attributes right, and we can create something that people would happily choose for selfish reasons, not because they feel like they have to, because they need to improve their impact to the planet, that we can truly drive change. We have to earn our stripes to say this, so I present this caveat. But my hope is that we can create proteins that will, be able to serve people in much more densely populated parts of the world that don't have as much ability to choose, the attributes that their food has, like whether it's gluten-free or soy-free or whatever else. It's like, they need to ensure that they feed their families and that they can afford to do so. And I believe that there's an inherent efficiency in plants that we can capitalize on to be able to do this effectively. And so everything we do is with that goal in mind. This is not a lifestyle business. We will go through phases whereby it would seem like a lifestyle business and we'll build a cool brand and we'll do all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, potentially crazily, we're doing it in the hopes of being able to change the world and the way the world eats. And for that change to be tangible.
Right.
And so that's why we do it.
So what started the path? Like, so would you wake up one morning and just say, it's a gong show, it's a shit show out there, and I need to do something, or was it?
Yeah, I think it's developed over time. So my wife and I had a small plant-based confectionery company in South Africa in 2012, and you can imagine at the time, we did like macaroons and granola, and was all like good for you, allergen friendly, very niche. And it worked very well, not because it was vegan, but because of the fact that it provided people with dairy intolerance an option.
Right.
And it was really
tasty.
It was made from excellent ingredients, and that was intentionally small and simple and wonderful. We had a great team, and we managed to generate a really good life for ourselves from that. And that's where it all started, and the intention was just to apply ourselves and, our skills and our time to something that feels more meaningful than,
Macaroons.
Macaroons, exactly. And so, when we came to Canada, I joined up with the family office that started Virtuous Pie and a few other companies in the space. And I was part of the leadership team at Virtuous Pie. And then in 2018, the concept came to light to be like, we think we can make a burger that will behave in a very satisfying way and we'll also have Whole Foods ingredients, so when you flip the box around, you will be able to recognize what you're eating, but it wouldn't taste like a veggie burger. And it was a very simple concept at the time, and obviously what was out there at the time, presented the experience, but not necessarily the ingredient panel.
Right.
And that's how it started. So the concept came to life then. I co-founded it with the family office, and in 2020 we opened our facility just after COVID hit, which was obviously an excellent time to get the ball rolling. And we very quickly realized that we're not going to change the world with burgers, even though it's a good place to start. And this idea of being able to create proteins that are untethered from the pursuit of replicating animal proteins really started kind of gaining momentum. And so as we've grown, and it's all with this North Star in mind, it's like, how do we create proteins that can outperform the existing proteins on every attribute that matters? And when it comes to every attribute that matters, it's what matters to normal people, okay? And so we're in our infancy. We're like babies in this journey, right? We've got many, many steps to take, but we opened our facility before we had a single sale, really, because we figured that we'd need that adaptability and that flexibility, and that control over our supply chain to be able to, with scale, drive.
So you committed to all that before even the first POs?
Yeah. It's crazy, like and
that's ballsy.
Yeah, certainly, and maybe stupid. But
I didn't want to go there. Ballsy, I gave you. Maybe a little stupid. But
once again, it's like we're not building a lifestyle business. So it would be smart to just surely start co-packing, etc. But if we are going to be able to compete on the attributes that matter, we have to own as much of our supply chain as possible. And then we started creating our own protein from scratch. So we took a blend of pea, brown rice, and oat, and then we vertically integrated the extrusion process of that protein. And now we're creating formats that are unlike any other formats. We don't refer to our products as like chicken or beef or whatever. We're trying to create a whole different idea and framing around additional proteins, more options for people, versus being hell-bent on imitating animal proteins.
Which never works.
I think
or
that
rarely works.
It's just a weird standard to have, right?
Yeah.
If you're beef, not beef, or you're chicken, not chicken.
And it's always the same. Well, it tastes just like chicken. Well, no, it doesn't taste just like chicken. It might taste something like a chicken.
But it doesn't need to taste like it. That's the thing, right?
I just want it to be
good.
good.
It needs to be good.
Like, I want to be able to eat it. I don't really care sometimes what it is per se.
Yeah.
But if it's really clean and I can do my part, whatever that is, like, I'm okay for the ride. You don't have to sell the chicken and beef story.
Yeah.
I already do chicken and beef. I know what they taste like.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and it's something that guides the way that we approach designing and creating products. It's like if you speak to most people and you speak about what their favorite dish is, and you ask them, well, why? They'll start saying, well, I love that kind of flavor. I love the texture that this dish has. It smells amazing. I love the sound that it makes when it's cooking. It reminds me of when I was growing up, etc., etc. You very rarely hear somebody go, "Oh, I just love eating a cow." Like, if it's not from a cow, it's not for me, right? And this happens a lot. And then people, and what that really leads to is the source is irrelevant. The source is only relevant because it nicely encapsulates the concept of this construction of multiple attributes that create a satisfying and desirable experience. But beyond that, it really doesn't matter, right? And so the same way you're saying now, it's like, well, okay, if we can provide you with something where you're cooking and it looks amazing, it smells amazing, and you feel good about what it's going to do to your body, because you feel good after eating it, and it's got a satisfying texture and whatever, it really doesn't matter whether it's an animal or plant or whatever else we end up creating in the future. And that's the way that we see it, and that's why we think that there's opportunity in just untethering from likeness to animal proteins. Because the other thing that does is, somebody says to you, as you mentioned, oh, it's just like chicken, right? And then you try it and you go, does this taste like chicken? Not, am I enjoying this experience, right?
Well, so you set the bar to chicken.
You set the bar as chicken. And then it's just it's a different scoring mechanism in your own brain. And then you go, okay, well, no, it's not like that, so I guess it's not good. Meanwhile, it could have actually probably been quite good if it's just being framed differently, right? And so I think that's important. And the other part is that I think that it's actually quite damaging for brands like ours to keep tethering to these animal proteins and going, it's just like the real thing, or stuff like that, because you're in essence going, well, this is a fake imitation of the real thing.
Yeah.
So, and
We
creating
talk
an
about that
We
all
inferior-
the
talk about
time.
that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're
Yeah.
trying, you're trying to convert, bad choice of words maybe, but if you're trying to get me to participate more in this, you have to sell me a little differently,
Yeah.
right? It's no different than pasta. Like, I'm Italian. I'm not, rice is risotto. You don't make pasta, right? You don't make it out of chickpeas and stuff. You can and you do. But as soon as you go down that path with me, my back goes up. It's durum semolina. It's going to come from the old country, or maybe from some of our wheat that goes to the old country. That's where they make it. That's pasta. Not this other shit that you're going to bag and produce a thing. But I've had it with friends who've gone down, haven't told me, and I'm eating. I'm thinking this is not quite right, but this is actually really good, right? You didn't because if you had told me, I know where I'm going to go. Like, I know emphatically, my mind will shut down. I will not be open-minded anymore. I'm going down the path, and I know where I'm going to dig in.
Yeah.
Right? But as soon as you frame it that way, but my worry for this industry, especially how it started, like, how do you unframe what 99.99% of the others are sort of seem to be doing? And I don't know who forced it down. I don't know if it's because, the meat industry has made everybody go down that path, or if it's...
I
don't
think
know,
you had to
the
start somewhere,
motivation.
though. So I think that was the thing.
Maybe.
You had to start somewhere.
how do you get
right?
out of it
So
then?
I don't know.
Like, how do
I
you
don't
dig
know.
out?
It's a tough conversation, right?
Like, I know what
it's-
you're
it's,
saying. I love that idea.
yeah.
The first time I tried you, Rattan brought me over. I should have known, because Rattan's vegetarian, right? To try it, but I wasn't even thinking that. Nobody said anything. I just tried it, and I thought, wow, this is really good. I don't know what it is. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
Then you find out and thinking, yeah, okay, the texture was really good, the taste was really good. You didn't tell me that you were
We might have
mimicking
bankrupted
something.
you.
Yeah, let's
We
go.
might have bankrupted you at the last show
That's okay.
because Rattan brought us over to your booth,
We were hungry.
and I think all we did was go,
Yeah.
"Holy shit, this taco's amazing!"
Yeah, they were really,
Right,
really
and then
good.
it was like, "What else you got?" And they were
Yeah.
like, "Well, we got this burger." Like, okay, we'll take one of those too. And then they just kept making
Yeah.
stuff.
But
right?
your sell
Like-
was different. I think we
Yeah.
even talked at the show that
Yeah.
is that nobody came to me, hey, this is like a this, like a that. It was just try this.
Yeah, and I think you in part answered where we believe we can start adjusting, or at least trying to create some sort of a paradigm shift around the way we think about plant-based proteins. It's easy to use a vessel to create a simple understanding of the concept.
Right.
So a taco,
Yeah,
you know
Yeah.
what a taco is.
yeah.
We're not saying it's a chicken taco
No.
or
No, it's
whatever.
taco.
It's a taco,
Yeah.
and maybe the one that we did. I think at that show we did like a bulgogi one, which is it's a really interesting kind of a flavor profile,
Are
etc.
you sure you don't want to exhibit this year? There might be time.
There
Maybe
might-
we can find you a booth
Better than that,
somewhere.
you could just bring food.
We
Yeah.
could just do that.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's that, using familiar formats
Yeah.
and vessels
Right.
to deliver an understanding of the concept and educate people on the fact that you can have these different types of protein in these formats, and they can be exceptional. That's where you start. It's a very hard problem. It's much easier to go, that it's like something, because you immediately
Yeah.
kind of allow
Right.
Yeah.
the kind of average person to go, okay, I get what they're trying to do with this. It's much harder to go our way, where we don't refer to animals at all on our packaging.
Mm-hmm.
We don't name our things after animals. Like, one of our products ranges is called protein shreds. And that's like, okay, well, what is that? So we're making our own lives more difficult. But we have to, at some point, start trying to shift away from that and become comfortable with this idea that you can have a spectrum of proteins from different sources
Right.
that are actually useful for all diet types. It's not just
Yeah.
for vegans and vegetarians, even though obviously that's a core.
but how do you market this? How do you do, like, so, I hit the store, like, how do you get me to try this and do this then? Like, I think before, like, we almost did a mini podcast before the
Yeah.
show, because we started talking with each other.
Yeah.
Like, one way, like, because I do work in the food industry, obviously, but, like, when we've launched, let's say, a new pasta from Italy that's not inexpensive, it's really difficult to go to a shelf and sell an $8.99 pasta.
Yeah.
500 grams, when there's a lot of alternatives at $1.99, $2.99, and some mid stuff at $3.49, $4.99, whatever, right? But to take an $8.99 leap into 500 grams of pasta is a leap.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we did, we did try to get a few of the better Italian restaurants in town a few restaurants who did pasta well, whether they're Italian or not, and say, hey, you got to try this, right? Put this on the menu. And they did start to flag the brand, and it did push some people into retail. Like it's a grind.
I
But
think
I
it's
don't know how else
easier.
you
I
do
think
it.
it's just lies and deception.
You think so?
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Look, you bought pasta. You ate pasta, not because someone told you what it was. They just gave it to you. And you went, shit, this is really good. Right?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Like in my case, so my mother-in-law and my daughter have gone veggie on certain days, right? And so they're like pariahs on those days, right? So we make veggie food, and we make everybody else's meatitarian dishes. And then one day I made sausages, your sausages actually. I made it for everybody. And they were kind of like, so what are those two having? I'm like, no, they're having sausages. And I said, oh, theirs are plant-based, so don't worry. Okay. Everybody had dinner, and then I said, I didn't actually change. Everybody ate the same, and there was, oh, yeah, I think I'm still hungry. And you're like, shut up, you're not hungry, right? Like, whatever. But like,
I think the lies.
I'm not saying that should be your marketing strategy. Like,
No.
lies and deception is probably
I
a
guess
bad idea
my
for
thing
brands,
is how
but
it's the trial is pretty important,
Yes.
right? But we all know demos are a great way to get trial. But any given Sunday, you don't know the traffic of the store. You don't know if anybody in the store gives a shit that day about whatever they're trying. Like it doesn't necessarily. It may not do anything. I think food service is
Yeah.
potentially a good play because if you can get onto the menu and they call out, ideally, this is tomorrow foods, whatever it is, it's a long-term play, but is that a better? It's like doctor detailing. Remember the old days of OTC?
Yeah.
That's sort of like if you
I
could
think
get the
it's-
doctor sampling it, it would kind of gradually go, but it would take, maybe take 3-4 years to run.
to me,
But
I think it's protein. I think it's the word
I like the protein angle because I can deal with
I think
that.
protein is a nutritional
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's just
like,
it
it makes you think of like a keto person or like Dan.
Oh, carb-fat protein, it's
right?
easy for me, I
Like
get it.
someone who wants to bulk up or
Yeah.
these things.
My son.
So we almost need to right? Like we almost need to redefine the word protein just so that because you see protein on a shelf, you don't think, oh, I can buy this, I can sub beef or I can sub chicken. I just need the biryani I'm making requires a protein. So which one is it? We don't say that, right? We say what meat are you putting in there, right?
I know,
But
guess
we
what I'm
almost
trying
need
to
to
figure out is
find
how
that
do you spin out
nomenclature.
of that mess though, right?
No, I think it's changing the word protein. I think it's getting people to recognize it's
It's
not
that
a
simple, eh?
scientific word.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. That's what I think. Are you like, you guys are crazy? It's not the.
No. You're right, and I think you're touching on multiple components. Unfortunately, it is a fairly complicated problem to solve.
Yeah.
Right. And we will do whatever we can, and it will be a mixture of all the components you spoke
Right.
about to solve it. But it's not easy, and it will take time.
Yeah.
So we've got a long-term kind of vision here. It's like we don't
Yeah.
expect to be overnight sensations. The way that we're approaching it is, first and foremost, we need to get the product attributes right, so that when we actually do get somebody to try the product, they immediately make the connection and they go, you know what, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they start digging deeper, they realize, oh, well, I actually feel comfortable about these ingredients,
Right.
and I feel comfortable feeding my family with it. I feel comfortable about the level of nutrition that's providing me, whether it's protein or other essential vitamins and minerals. I can afford it, so I can eat it regularly. I don't have to treat it as a luxury. And some products will be, for sure. But the goal is, like, how do we get this to be a staple? So, so that at least when you are getting people to try it, you're getting them to buy it again,
Right.
which I think is one of the issues in the space right now, and we'll table that. But I do think that, a lot of brands are bludgeoning very weak value propositions
Right.
at their audiences or into their audiences, and spending a copious amount of resources filling their funnel with people to try their products, but not getting enough people coming back to have it again, because we're losing on the basic attributes:
Right.
affordability, nutrition, and experience, right? And so I think you have to get those things right. So at least when you are getting people to try it, you're getting them to come back. Then getting them to try it is very expensive, as you can imagine. So the way that we're approaching it is using food service is a focus in the short term, and meal kit companies. With a meal kit company, they crafting fantastic recipes with your product. They're telling people exactly how to cook it and how to use it. They're making people comfortable and familiar with whatever this new type of protein is. Plus, they're also catering to a lot of people that are switching in 1 or 2 meals per week, and the rest of the time they're eating animal proteins or whatever. So it's targeting an audience that's focused on kind of eliminating animal proteins where they can, and then creating a clear understanding of how to use the product. So we will use those channels and influential kind of food service to drive that understanding and drive trial, and then make sure that our product attributes meet. And so we've got a new protein that we're launching in like the next month or 2 that is high in protein. It's got only recognizable ingredients. It's incredibly versatile. You can make anything with it, right? It's very high in
Wait, you need to
essential
go now
vitamins
so
and
you can
minerals.
come back in a month.
And exactly. But so, you know, I think that for us, it's like you've got to get the product right, and then you've got to get people to understand how to use it, and you can't do that while bleeding millions of dollars in the process. And so for us, you know, using food service and those other channels is probably the way to do it effectively in the short term.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
How does affordability work into this though? Because I do know, like, and it probably, again, might be a little bit of a deterrent.
Yeah.
If I already know what I'm buying and I'm used to buying what I buy, you know, I'm probably not going to go uphill on price
Yeah.
to try. I probably will come downhill or at least be on the same hill, right? But I do
You're
find
going to go slightly uphill.
I might slightly.
Like we've been trained
But
to recognize.
I know, but again, I'll dig
Right.
in. Like if you're not giving, you got to give me a reason, right?
Yeah, stop being so cheap. He makes good product. Buy
That's
it
not
already.
the point. You still got to try to get me to eat it, man. It's not. You still got to, you know. And again, when I go in, if
You
you're,
see,
if,
lies and deception works.
Yeah.
You just need to lie to him.
apparently that's fine. If that works, we're all good. But I do try to figure out, like, you know, you can't be 30, 40 points. It's like the
Yeah,
first
okay.
days of organics, right? You had a coffee that was $9.99, and come off the organics was $17.99. Well, that's great. One word changed. That's how people did it. 'Cause remember, I was in mass.
Yeah.
One word changed. I'm going to pay 60%, 70% premium. Like, what the hell would I do that for?
Yeah.
Like, you better give me a better story
No,
than just
yeah,
slapping a
there's
word
an
on. So I'm trying to
elasticity
figure
to
out,
it.
like, a 20-point spread. I
like
might
20,
be,
30%. You kind of
30 might be
expect it.
pushing, but, you know,
I'll pay
15,
30.
20, you know,
You'll
I
pay
might be
20.
willing to do it. But how do you get down to that point, though? Because it doesn't seem like this industry has that either ability, willingness, or I don't know if it's a COGS issue. I don't know if it's because there's not enough producers. I mean, you're your own machine, so at least you have control over the co-packing. Like,
Yeah.
that expense has been taken out.
Yeah.
You're doing a bunch of your own distribution.
Yep.
So you've taken some of that expense out. So, but not everybody thinks that way or can do that.
Yeah.
So,
I don't want to provide a convoluted response.
it's okay, it was a convoluted question. What's the difference?
First and foremost, for us, there's a place for premium products
For sure.
and to purely position them as such and
100%.
sell on benefit. It's convenient, we craft the
Right.
experience for you, like we use high quality ingredients, all of that, right? There is a space for that and there's people who want that.
Right.
And we will still go there. And then, but to drive enough volume to actually have a tangible impact on the world, you're going to have to cater to people at that affordable price point.
Right.
So what does that mean? And it's affordable, like right now, means it's got to be in range of
Right.
what people are spending on protein. It can't be 20 points above. Here it might be okay,
Right.
but there are many parts in the world where there's no way.
No.
Like where if you are not cheaper, you're not going to
Right.
win. But if you are cheaper, you are going to win, and you can drive significant volumes by doing so. So once again, we've got to earn the right to say that, but we're in the process of doing that. Plant protein is inherently more efficient to produce, substantially so. And forget sustainability, forget all of those other aspects. Even just calorie conversion. You know how inefficient it is to feed animals calories and then only get a little bit back? Where would people do that in any other way? You wouldn't give your money into something intentionally so that you can get less money back, or
Right.
do other things like that where you're not necessarily getting too much out of it, but you keep feeding a lot more in than you're getting back. And now I'm just reducing it to simple, like protein.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the amount of calories in to produce protein versus plants, it's ridiculous, right? And I invite everyone to just go and look at the numbers. I'm not going to share them, but just go and look at the numbers and see how inefficient the energy conversion is. The second thing is water. The copious amount of water that's used to generate animal protein versus plant proteins. Maybe that's not a big issue in Canada where we have a lot of water, but a lot of parts in the world, water is a big issue, right? Land, significantly more amount of land, even when animals are caged,
Yeah.
all of those reasons. without even considering sustainability, etc., mean that on paper we have to be able to outperform animal proteins on efficiency. So that's what we believe. So we don't believe in just driving parity. We believe in completely driving beyond parity because the numbers, at least in theory, dictate that we should be able to do that, right? So that's, for us, it's like, okay, well, how do we really get to the bottom of that and understand how we can extract every ounce of efficiency from this process? Because the animal industry is really eked out almost as much as they can.
Right.
They're very much limited. I somewhat see it that it's analogous to ice versus electric, you know, and there's reasons why people, as you mentioned before, you know, opt for ice, but the ceiling of electric is so much higher than the ceiling of ice. I see it the same in this, and you know, I think the problem is, as with electric, you know, the Prius was around for quite a while, and it wasn't cool, and it didn't really you know, people didn't really respond to that. But then, you know, Tesla released a car that, you know, was like drag racing sports cars.
Yeah.
Suddenly people are like, oh, that's quite sexy.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty
Sexy,
cool.
a bit flamboyant.
A little bit cool. Like,
Yeah.
maybe this electric thing isn't quite as like,
Aspirational.
you know, like esoteric as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming something that is actually, you know, people are aspiring towards. You know, but you need it to make people choose it for selfish reasons. And for us to be able to do that, yeah, experience is going to be a big one, but also affordability. They're going to have to choose it because it's actually more affordable for them than choosing the alternative.
Right.
But people wouldn't do that if they're drastically compromising on experience. Otherwise, lentils would be, you know, the staple.
Right.
You know, they're nutritious, they're cheap, sustainable, etc. And so I think that for us, it's like, yeah, that's it. Own as much of a supply chain as possible. Focus on creating a really efficient production process that can be automated. Use simple ingredients, and then drive volume. And drive volume by focusing on profitable business channels early on, so that there's some sustainability in it, versus you know, spending millions and millions of dollars on trying to sell a weak value proposition into retail, so that you can look cool at retail, right? And
Your challenges, though, like, so I'm just thinking through, like, the other bits that you talked about. So, like, needing to reach a mass population. Like, it's actually bigger than even just, you know, re-engineering the word protein, right? Like, if you think of, like, if you're into lots and lots and lots of families in lower economic situations, they buy sources of protein that maybe don't lend itself in format, right? Like things like chuck meat, right? Like ground beef, whatever you want to call it, ground whatever, all the way. Do you know what I mean? Like all of these sort of things,
Canned,
right?
there's a lot of canned proteins. We all know
proteins,
that.
yeah.
Are highly consumed. because
Tuna,
they're-
things like that. Like, how do you? Is that on your radar? Because that seems like a whole different, like teaching them formats too, right? Like right down to, I'm going to the bunker. I'm going to grab my styrofoam or whatever it is now, covered with ground meat inside it. Like, how do you conquer that? Like, that's, you have a lot of work to do.
we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap.
And that's what I'm saying. We're probably a little bit crazy, you know. But
No, I think it's a big deal. I think it's just like, for me, the protein piece makes so much sense to me because we have to make that break from it being, you know, like 15 years ago, an electrolyte was not something you talked about. You got hungover, you needed to drink certain drinks to hydrate, right? But now everyone talks about electrolyte like it's a thing, right? Like, I need to hydrate, I'm feeling dehydrated, I'll go out and get a drink that has an electrolyte in it. So we can make the breakthrough. Protein is probably the same thing. We don't talk about protein the way we did 10 years ago even.
Yep.
But the format thing to me, like teaching families to recognize new sources of protein,
yeah.
and then the way that you deliver them seems somewhat daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated problem. So I just want to make one note on that as well.
Yeah.
Our goal would be to not compromise at all on quality or nutrition when selling into markets that are a lot more price sensitive. So first and foremost, the goal would be to have the same quality proteins that we have available to more privileged markets, to those markets at really affordable prices. So I just want to kind of put that out there, and I think it's possible that it's not about kind of us having over time diluting the quality of the products so we can get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It has to be at this level of nutrition and experience. The other thing is like, it almost somewhat gets a little bit, it becomes really complicated in a micro setting to understand the nuance of each market that you're going into.
Yeah.
It becomes more simple in terms of major attributes because people choose food and protein for such simple reasons when they don't have the luxury to choose it for all these other reasons. So as long as you have the ability to use, people understand the local market, to go and get the local community to understand that there's a protein source that will work really well in all of the cuisines that people are used to there. It's a carrier of flavor, of texture, all this kind of stuff. And it's cheaper than what you're currently buying, and your family is going to feel full from that, and it's going to provide you with the nutrients that you need.
Well, if you hit the first two and then rattle in price, then you're golden.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
And there are certain communities where, it really, we've done lots of kind of things and surveys and stuff, and it really depends on the community, and the order always changes, but price, experience, nutrition, always top, right? In those communities, it will probably be price first, right? And then probably experience, and then probably nutrition.
Nutrition will probably come in third, I hate to tell you.
Yeah,
It's
I would think
be
so,
down
yeah.
there.
But it's like,
And taste might even hit one.
No, nutrition always comes last, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Taste
think,
to me like it's primo.
economically,
But-
we're,
Has to be
we're
premium.
on
First
this
taste.
kind of like
100%.
dangerous times,
Yeah.
and what they're worried about is obesity, right?
Yeah.
Because
As we
you-
still buy
you-
Coke and.
Yeah, well, no, but
You
you
know.
also lean to processed meats and processed
All of
protein
it,
and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff, right? Because it's cheaper, so.
But that's why those
Yeah.
industries still exist, right? There's a reason for it, right? It's just cheap source,
Yeah.
shitty source,
Yeah.
but cheap source.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also, the the severity of the level of disposable income will impact us quite drastically. There are parts of the world where like it would be purely based on
It's like
can I
straight
afford it,
economics. Yeah.
right? And that's our goal. Is that it's going to take a long time. So I'm saying these things, and it's not like it's going to happen
Right.
overnight. That's our goal. We have to be able to go there and provide super high quality nutrition. And then there are, even in North America, there'll be communities that are not quite at that level, where experience may still be number one, then
Right.
price, etc. And we'll work through it. But ultimately, we want to win on all those attributes because we inherently believe that we're capable of doing so, considering.
That's why I liked
efficiencies.
it from the beginning,
Yep.
right? It was because I like where you're trying to go with it and what your thought pattern was, right? Because
Yeah.
it's going to be tough because to win people over like me, I mean, again, I can eat vegetables all day. I'm good. But I taste has to come in like fast. And then it can't be like super expensive relative to the other source, which wasn't panicking to leave.
Yeah.
Right? We were talking about before, like, I know I'm going to buy an electric car. I know that.
Yeah.
But I still have in the back of my head one more V8.
Yeah.
Right? And I get it. I'm not going to win any awards at a show like this for that, but I got one more V8 in me.
Yeah.
But I know I'm going to go electric, and it
Yeah.
doesn't bother me. But it
Yeah.
just needs to get to that point because I like, it was what we were saying before, I like the mechanics of it, I like the sound, I like the feel, I like all the old school things.
Yeah.
I don't want it to burn fuel.
Yeah.
I don't care if it burns water, I'd still prefer that.
Yeah.
But if I have to go and you get it to a price point where I'm good with it and you get the kilometers up, I'll go.
Yeah.
I'm not that dug in. Well, maybe just one more.
Yeah. And I think, the narrative has been, and the really, to a large extent, the stick in the plant-based industry has been, how dare you not do this when
I
you
know.
know the impact you're having. But there also comes a point in time where we have to be realistic about, what's actually going to deliver the most impact.
Yep.
Not what sounds like we're doing the most. It's like what's actually doing the most.
Right.
And so if you say, for example, you love the sound of a V8 and there's something about the way it feels when you put the pedal and stuff, instead of us going, you know what, Kenny, you're a bit of an asshole because you keep wanting to buy a V8. And,
It's okay.
It's like-
I'm
it's
used
okay.
to it. It's not,
Yeah.
it wouldn't hurt my feelings.
no,
so
but it is.
sure.
It's like we understand you.
Yeah.
We understand your weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's not the point. We need to create something that makes you go, this is cooler than
Absolutely.
that thing that I loved.
Yeah.
right? And be realistic about that. And when we create something that rumbles and whatever, but it's way better for the planet, happens to be, etc., you'll go and you'll be happy about it.
Yeah.
You'll go, that's what we should be doing, right? And we can do that. But the emphasis has been on, let's just try and create what's already there,
Right.
or tell people that they have to do this because otherwise they're going to destroy the planet.
Right.
It doesn't
Which
work.
we know that doesn't work.
It doesn't work
Because
at all.
everybody should be scared. We should be scared all day to what we're doing to this planet.
Yeah.
And you know what we do? The same thing the next day that we did the day before.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you know what? I can't deal in this fear that is so large that I don't even understand what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get to the point where you feel defeated, or you feel that it doesn't matter what I do anyway. You're doing good. You'll do twice. Just do 2 times. That way you take care of me and you. Right?
Yeah.
Then I can still do me, which is not what you need and what you want.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Which is
Yeah.
why we did. Again, when we came last year, like when we tried it, like for me, the first thing was what? This first off tasted really good, and it didn't feel bad. Like tongue feel, mouth feel. It's
That was
critical.
good.
Like
It
for
was
me,
good.
I love food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff comes, like I want it to be nutritious, but I can opt in and out of that at any given moment as well.
Yeah.
Like price is really important to me, but I can opt in and out of that pretty quickly too. But
Yeah.
I am not opting out of taste and texture. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't give a
Yeah.
shit how good it is for the planet or how good it is for the family.
That's,
I'm
but,
not going
but
there.
he's right. That's why we don't eat lentils.
Yeah. There
Well,
are
we eat them
options.
sometimes.
Well, I don't mind lentils, but there's certain
We eat
ways to
them
make a
sometimes.
lentils where it's not, Jesus Christ, I mean lentils,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I think that the realization that we as a species we're unfortunately quite selfish.
That's the thing.
What?
What? I think we all know it, but it's like to kind of like allow that idea to sink into your business
Yeah.
narrative, to go, like we need to be really, like clear on the fact that people are always going to choose what they
they
feel
want.
is what they want, right? And let's give them what they want.
Exactly.
Not let's try and change what they want. I think that's probably how we distill it. And we haven't given them what they want yet. We work towards that, but I think
Got
that's
a lot
the goal.
closer,
A lot closer, yeah,
Right.
for sure. But if you give people what they want, people talk. Even in Canada, I think the vegan and the vegetarian community combines almost 10% of the population, which is still a lot. It's Canada's 38 million people, so you've got 3.8 million people
Yeah.
eating at
Yeah.
minimum, probably
Yeah.
hopefully 365 meals
Yeah.
right?
a year, right? You're looking at hundreds of millions of meals.
It's pretty
that contain
significant.
plant
But you're also
protein.
getting the rest of us to maybe go into 1 or 2 a week,
Well,
right? Again, when you're trying to figure out what to sub in and sub out.
Yeah.
And the proteins is the stick
Lies
balls,
and
right?
deception, and you could get all 38 million. Just like that.
Yeah.
Just lie to them all. One meal. Maybe that's a campaign. Lie to your family just once.
Lie to your family,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just once
One
this
meal
week.
at a time.
Yeah.
Just once this
That's
week.
great.
I'm in so much trouble if somebody actually does this.
We're gonna have so much trouble if people listen to this. I'm gonna get nothing but, V8, you still on combustible engine? Yeah. That dinosaur. Thank God. Just make sure you get the name, we got to know this, right? I want to hear it because it's only gonna be me right now. It's gonna get all this hate mail coming in next week.
The
I'm
other
a
thing-
degenerate.
The other thing that I'll also add, though, Kenny, is in terms of impact, V8 is probably not the most impactful you can be in the short term either.
No.
I think that there's a lot of kind of like uncertainty. There's just too much. It's like it feels like everything we do is screwing up the planet. But I think that as you mentioned, and I'm vegan myself, so I'll just put that out there. It had to obviously come out, considering that I'm vegan. You can't go on through a conversation without saying it. But like, I do believe that to a large extent, if we start just being more realistic and practical about what's going to deliver the impact, like if 90% of the population chose 1 or 2 meals a week, it's far more impactful
huge.
than 3% of the population being vegan or 5% of the population being
Right.
vegan, right?
Right.
And my biggest drive is animal welfare, right? That's I think what mostly has driven me to kind of to find my way into the space. And as we mentioned earlier, like this food sucks to be in business.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
It's tough. Manufacturing is hard.
Yeah, it's all tough.
CPG, it's all hard. There's much
Yeah,
easier ways to make
retailers are
money.
hard, but
Yeah,
it's-
you can't do it for money. Like it's otherwise you're.
Well,
I
you
mean, some
think you
people
do it
can.
for that at the beginning, then you
Yeah.
soon really realize that that's really,
Yeah.
if that's the motivation, you might want to do something else.
Yeah, there's definitely easier ways of making money.
Yeah.
But I think that even from that standpoint, I would obviously want most people to avoid eating animals if possible. But I think that would still rather focus on the net result and go, what's going to deliver the most impact? And if that means people hold on to things for a while, but more people are replacing it, it's still, even from an animal perspective, has more impact on a certain number of animals, right? And so I think that notion is probably.
But I think that's
something.
where the discussion sort of is like. Before we got on today, we were talking about how polarized the world's becoming in a lot of spaces, especially most of democracies.
Yeah.
Like there's middle ground seems to be completely lost. You're either blue, red, white, blue, black, white. It's right, wrong. Like there's nothing in the middle, and you can't talk to anybody for fear of being canceled. Like you can't have discussions anymore to try to get the little wins, because that's where the wins come from.
Yeah.
Right? It's like in baseball. You're not hitting home runs every time. There's singles, there's doubles. Sometimes you're walking. It's the net.
Yeah.
The end of the game that you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
Can we get there? And we're not going to get there if we can't talk to each other.
Yeah.
We can't get there if you want to drive electric and I still want to drive gas, even though I know I'm going to get out of mine. I get it.
Yeah.
But if we're going to hate each other to start, it just doesn't work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you need a community of minds to be able to solve difficult problems. And if it's left to only the people who want to make a lot of noise without saying very much,
Right.
And everybody else just goes, okay, we'll stay out of this, then we get into the narrative being the strongest kind of thing out there versus the reality and the facts.
Right.
And I think that being able to have conversations about it will illuminate the fact that I think most of us are really on the same team and trying to achieve the same goals. Maybe not factory farmers. I would think probably not on the same
leave
team.
them out.
We're probably not super thrilled about the idea of alternative proteins outperforming their proteins. But generally speaking, I think most people want the same things. Right? I think most people want good things for the planet. Most people want good things for animals. But it's hard to not be selfish. And I say that in the most respectful way possible. And it's good to be realistic about that, and then to speak about that and to go, well, how do we deliver the most impact? And for us as a company, that is, creating a protein that displaces animal proteins in large populations, not only in Vancouver. For other people, it's other ways, but it's understanding, well, where do you deliver the most tangible impact?
Right.
It's awesome.
Cool.
We're almost out of time, but before we end, does anybody have a question for Dean? Wait, come up here. Come up here, and then just throw your
Stand there. It's all good.
Yeah.
Won't be too close.
It's all good.
So listen, fascinating discussion. I could have gone another hour easily. So you're looking at a vegetarian, but once a week I do opt into plant-based for myself and my family. But the question I had for you is really regarding supply chain. I think it's incredible that you're vertically integrated.
Yep.
But what areas in that supply chain do you feel, as you kind of want to go to the masses and want to get to that scale, what areas do you feel are going to be most challenging in terms of that vertical integration? Will it be sourcing? Because if something sources out, that's going to screw up or mess up everything else, especially your cost of goods. So what areas in the supply chain do you find most challenging as you kind of scale?
So I think for us, from a technical point of view, being able to go one step upstream is probably our most the most challenging kind of midterm component for us, which is taking the raw material and fractionating it, which means that you take, let's say, for example, it's oats or peas or whatever, and you isolate the protein and you separate the starch and the fat, and that gives us a kind of a pure protein source to then take through our process and create a fibrous muscular high protein structure that we use as the base for all of our proteins. That's a very expensive and a very large scale thing to do, but there's a lot of margin in there. And so for us, like in the short term, that would be one thing. Or in the medium term, I think when we start looking globally, there's more than enough raw materials. A lot of the raw materials are being sent to animals, right?
Get fed down.
They fed down to animals. So, it's grossly inefficient. So that's why, once again, please go and look into it. The amount of calories you get out for calories in, there's more than enough raw materials. We'll have to redirect those, and we'll have to maybe change our crops for ones that are being put into these proteins, etc. But we will, as soon as we have leverage, which will take some time, we will work with farmers to ensure that we're actually creating a sustainable supply, and also a supply that's actually fair to farmers. It's incredible how farmers are squeezed for margin, right? And so I think that integrating in that way, we wouldn't necessarily go and probably farm the stuff ourselves, but we would work quite closely with them. Then when we start looking more downstream towards the customer side, then you start running into challenges like, well, where are they actually developed cold supply chains, right? And so our proteins can actually be shipped in a dry state, which means that we can go into parts of the world where you don't need refrigeration, etc., and all you do is add water and mix it into your whatever you're making. It's a soup or whatever it could be, and you have a super high quality protein source. You know, that's not relevant here, but that becomes relevant when we start going. It's like Canada, like 99% of the world doesn't live like we live here, right? It's crazy. And so these are when we start getting into the really interesting problems as well. And that's what I'm super excited about, is once we have the scale to do that. And I hope that we have an issue whereby there might not be enough crops being grown. That means we're definitely doing enough.
Well, I think diverting, like if you and I get to 3 days a week, where the protein source is a little different, that means that stuff that was going to feed what was 7 days a week is no longer going there. Do you know what I mean? Like if you start pushing that back, then there's supply, because I think most of the stuff is being fed to animals, which that's our source of protein. But if we can get off that byproduct that was going there, it's got to go somewhere else, and we may as well, you know. Because I think I'm like you. I don't really. It doesn't. I just like eating.
Yeah.
I like food. I like a good meal. That's what I love. Right? That's it. That's what life's all about, is having a family around and eating like just a great meal.
Yeah.
So, again, where it comes from, whatever, man, as long as it's good.
And I really like that question, so I'm going to add one more piece of
We should
that.
do the podcast.
The one thing to also take into consideration is the same as we consider the opportunities of that supply chain and that scaling, it also makes abundantly clear the opportunity, right? Currently, you know, in North America, at retail, plant-based proteins are still less than 2%. It's like maybe 1.4, 1.5% of the total market. If we can drive price parity at such tiny scale, what happens at much larger scales and we get that kind of economies of scale, right? And that's why I'm saying, to me, it's obvious. Like, there's no way that animal proteins can keep up with it once we do that. But we have to get the basic attributes right. And then these supply chain challenges come. There will certainly be growing pains. I mean, a lot of these proteins have been around for long, but we're in a nascent stage here. Like, it's very early on, and so there'll be a lot of lessons learned. But I hope to start having those hard problems around how do we actually scale the supply chain and get bigger. But in the short term, we've got capacity as a company, and we've got probably 2 years in us before we start hitting those kinds of issues. But
Super cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Super
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any last questions?
Trevor's
Yeah,
gonna
come
have
on
some.
up. Come on up. Yeah, and then.
You talked about the importance of plant proteins being more efficient
Yes.
to produce, and same with water is more efficient in plant proteins.
Yes.
So do you think it's important to have some sort of a measurable system in place to prove that? Because, I mean, if we're trying to save our planet, that becomes very important in terms of water and that sort of thing. So do you have a system that measures the efficiency of that sort of thing?
Yeah, we do.
And is it something that will become more widely used?
I think it will become more widely used by those who have a good story to tell. I've got a feeling that it's unlikely that you're going to get the factory farming industry to be presenting those numbers anytime soon. It would be very hard to basically, force them into that.
Right.
But for smaller companies, there's a lot of talk around that. We do our own impact analysis where we take the total amount that we produce in comparison to animal proteins, how much water have we saved, how much land have we saved, etc. It's staggering even at our small volumes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have a hard time getting, which is still 98% probably of the actual protein source, which is factory farming. You're going to have a hard time getting them to present those numbers or put them on their packaging.
Yeah, because I know I'm a small farmer ourselves, we grow fruit. And
Yes.
one of the things that we think that we do a good job of is sustainability.
Yes.
In terms of efficient use of water, no fertilizers,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Yes.
But then how do you prove that unless you do your lies and,
Well,
sorry.
See?
But it's a difficult thing to
But
prove.
the
so-
98% who do the other side control the narrative in a lot of ways, to your point. It's a matter, and I think that's where shows like this, in this industry in particular, right, is important. Because the grassroots, that level of talk, And farming is becoming more sexy than it's been for a long time. Because people are, a little, but it's all baby steps, right? Because
True.
people are starting to realize we have to do better. Like, we have to fix some of the stuff that we're doing.
Right.
Right? So I think the narrative comes, but it comes from you as a farmer, you as a producer in this, and then us talking about trying to cut down the mule or two. It'll happen. It's just a little slow, but otherwise, you're right. The numbers are not going to come from the other side.
No.
It just doesn't happen. Why would they share that?
Yeah.
But that change is a really interesting one, right?
It
Because
is.
you get to a place where, one, you get households who start to sub 1 or 2 meals. Then we start learning the questions that we need to be asking, right? In
Which
the
is what
same
you're
way
sort of
that-
pushing at us. We'll say, wow,
In the
what
same
about
way that
that?
you read a
Yeah.
nutrition label now that we didn't read 20 years ago.
Right.
They were there, but we didn't know what we were looking at. We didn't know what
Nobody
to
cared.
ask, and nobody cared, right? But now everybody reads. Like kids that are 10, 12, they read the nutrition labels because they know what they're looking for, right? So in the same way, you guys are starting to do some of this. We'll have to pick up on that, right? Like, how else will we go from meatitarian to going, well, I need to know which protein substitutes are good and which ones are
And which
bad.
are
Like, how do I
efficient
know
and-
that I'm
Yes.
helping, right? So
All of
Contribute
it,
to
right?
the
Yeah.
sustainability. So do you think there'll come a time when small farmers like us will join forces to look at how do we improve the efficient use of water, chemicals, all of those sorts of things by
Yeah.
creating some sort of
sounds like you just did.
Yeah.
well, I hope so.
Yeah.
But the
We
conversation,
should start with these
but the
two and
conversation
add another
starts here,
one
and
in. Yeah.
it starts more even on the conversion. Once we all start, as the masses start participating more, we do start to look more. You start to read more, and then we start asking these things like, okay, if we're going to do this, why are we doing this? And you're coming with compelling reasons. Well, it's a lot easier to move
Yeah.
when I believe what you're telling me, and there's enough
Right,
people
exactly,
saying it.
when I
And the
believe what
problem
you're
is,
telling
remember,
me.
like narrative. I mean, you don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the narrative is run for the most part in our worlds by those who have the most money.
Right.
And the most money right now is in those industries that are probably doing the most damage.
Yeah.
But we're all talking about it. People do listen to this, and they know that we're real people. I'm not going to go out and be vegan tomorrow. It's not going to happen. But it's not to say I couldn't down the road. Give me the reasons. Show me what to do. Show me what great food is. I'll
Yeah.
go anywhere you guys want. It's good to go. But it's this talk, I think, that's really, really, really good and really important.
Yeah.
And thanks for being a farmer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting with that as well. I know we're short on time, but I actually think
Trevor
that
wanted one too.
that we have a lot in common with small farmers. Really, I once had a guy. They were delivering a piece of equipment, and the guy was like, "What do you guys do here?" And I was like, "We make plant-based proteins." He goes, "Gross." I was like, "Okay, like that's fine. Why gross?" He's like, "Well, you guys are taking away business from the small farms." I was like, "Are we? Really?" He's like, "Yeah, you guys are telling people that it's bad to eat meat, etc." I was like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to tell people it's unsustainable to have factory farming be the primary source of generating the protein that we need to survive off of as a planet. And the factory farms are screwing you a lot more than we're screwing you. We probably have more in common than we have against one another. And I think that there is a lot of that. And I think, in terms of being able to measure, etc., there are groups like that are starting to create carbon calculators, and you can stamp it onto your site, etc. The more that becomes prevalent and ubiquitous, the more people will expect to see that, and the larger companies will have to follow because there'll be an inherent doubt and distrust because it's void of that credibility.
Right.
But that will take really long, and I don't imagine that. I don't imagine that they would just let it happen easily. Yeah.
Okay, we've got one last question, then we'll get out of here so the Hearts and Carts guys can get sent.
Really applaud you and what you're doing with your business.
Thank
You
you.
you used the words paradigm shift earlier in the conversation, and that really reflects what you're trying to do here. You made a couple comments. I have a couple questions around why Canada? Was that for you the most available, most opportunistic market to work this in? Because you mentioned that Canada, we like few others do in the world, right? And we know that, and we just take it for granted.
Yeah.
So can you expand on that a little bit? Like, why Canada? Because I come from an extremely similar background to Ken, and we all know the difficulties of doing business in Canada. And
So-
I also work for an American company, and I see what goes on there. So how did you end up here?
So I didn't know that tomorrow would be tomorrow when we came to Canada. When we first came over to Canada, my wife wanted to study nutrition, and our company put us in a position where we could, do that remotely. And within 3 months, we just really fell in love with it. And then things just really took off. I didn't choose Canada to create this business. It's kind of like I ended up in Canada and created it. And it's a harder place to do business in many ways, but it's also, there's a lot of other support that you wouldn't have elsewhere, which makes it, better. And there's a lot of innovation in this area, and a lot of, people who are applying themselves to solving difficult problems, which is awesome. So, I don't think that we had thought about it then. However, as we've started putting this together, one of the reasons why we use pea and oats is because of its abundance in the prairies, and they work great for rotation. So, my hope is that we get to a scale where we can actually leverage the fact that we've got these crops grown in abundance here and actually process them here, and actually take advantage of those capabilities. But it wasn't specifically created because of Canada.
Is there another country in the, what other countries would be prime markets for plant-based foods then, like Canada and like Scandinavian countries or someplace like that? Like what are the other prime global markets for that?
Where are you moving to next?
Yeah, exactly.
When Canada wins Europe, where are you going next?
Yeah. So I think for us there's a tremendous amount of low-hanging fruit to build a foundation in North America, and so we want to pick our battles and not open too many fronts.
I agree.
There's a huge Europe's got a lot of opportunity, but they're well served. They've got some very innovative companies there that are doing great things. So I think for us, we see a lot of opportunity in places like South Korea, China, Japan, to provide alternatives that fire on all these different cylinders, potentially to start more as premium products, and as we develop scale to do them more affordable. I think if I think about next steps in terms of entering new markets, I see opportunity there for probably the slightly more premium products, and then with time, obviously, we would want to go into places like India and certain parts of Africa, etc., and be competing effectively there with our base proteins.
Okay, awesome. Last question is I see this as a real David and Goliath battle, what you're up against kind of thing, right? Because
Yep.
I like Ken, still have one more petrol vehicle in my future, I think, kind of
Yes.
thing, and I'm slow to move and everything else. So I also grew up, my father was in the meat industry all of my life kind of thing, so I kind of have a pretty good insight into that and how that all worked with big grocery and everything else. How do you fight the battle? How do you, and I'm sure there's, I know there's some plant-based groups and there's a bunch of them here and stuff like that, but how do you collectively fight this marketing lobbying might that you're up against kind of thing? Because I see that as just the massive brick wall kind of thing, right? To break through so that all of us other consumers can actually start to hear the message.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
I'm going to sit down, but love
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kyle.
It's a very good question, and it's probably one of the most challenging parts of what we do. From the beginning, we've said that our biggest competitor is the mindset around food and the control of that mindset around food. And once again, not like a conspiracy, like, oh, we're being controlled, but it's very, very hard to shape or to shift the idea people think about this. And a lot of that thinking has been dictated by far more powerful industries and companies than ours. And yes, it's David and Goliath, and in that sense, and it's to be determined whether or not we'll win. You don't know, right? I can't say, oh, obviously we're going to win. It's clear. I fundamentally see that the opportunity is there in the products, but can we get across the line in that sense? I believe that it will eventually happen. It's just at what pace. One of the best ways we can do it is to make our products irrefutably better.
Right.
That's what it boils down
Let's
to.
play step one, really and truly.
Just-
If
just
you
step one.
hammer that,
Yeah.
I think we're all good to go.
I feel like our industry's gotten so caught up in novelty and differentiation, well, we're not even getting the basics right.
Right.
Right? And people choose
Yeah,
food
I'd
for
agree.
basic reasons. It's not an app. It's like you eat
Exactly.
food, right? And we need to get those basic things right. And I believe that if we can somehow keep our heads down and just as much as possible stay clear of all the noise and the distractions and whatever, and go, let's just create a product that wins on the basic attributes and survive until that happens.
Yeah.
The rest will come, and we'll be able to, hopefully build up a war chest that will give us a better capability of meeting them at that
Right.
level. But we will always use different tactics. We're not going to go the same way these guys go. We'll never be able to beat them at their own tactics. But I think the best thing is get the products to speak for themselves
It's
eventually.
awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank
We're all
for doing
rooting for
this.
you,
Yeah.
Thank you.
and for
Yeah.
us.
Yes. Exactly.
Cool.
Rooting for
Yeah.
us.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks
See,
for
that wasn't
coming
that
out
bad.
today. Wasn't bad.
No, it was
You
great.
had a lot to
Thank you.
say.
Hey?
You're not boring at all. You got a lot to say.
Okay.
I find it fascinating. I'm with him. I agree. I thoroughly enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
Likewise.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
And thanks for
And
sticking
then
around.
thanks for sticking around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Hearts and Carts, we're sorry. We cut into your time. So, yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers.
That was really great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Kenny, thank you.
That was awesome, man. Like, seriously, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. That was really, really good.